Hello, Carine.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, everyone who is going to watch us. Today, my guest is Carine Kanimba, who is a friend of my daughter, Veronica. A few words about Carine. Carine was born in Kigali, Rwanda, and it was just before the genocide of 1994. It was just the worst genocide in the history of Rwanda. Carine lost both her parents during the genocide, and she was only 1 year old. She was saved and she was adopted by the sister of Carine's biological father, Aunt Tatiana, and Tatiana's husband, Paul Rusesabagina, whose story is portrayed in a famous movie, Hotel Rwanda, which many of you could have watched it. Carine and her sister were taken together with Paul and Tatiana's own children to Belgium. And nowadays, actually, why I am recording this interview with Carine is the fact that Carine's adopted father, or Carine's father, was abducted, and he was taken to Rwanda, and he faces charges of terrorism. Carine, first of all, I would like to say I feel so sorry, and I'm sending you my love, and with my love, it's just the love of millions of people on this planet. Millions of people who think that your father was a hero and is a humanitarian. Is the person who during the genocide in 1994 saved lives of more than 1,200 people. I also know that there is a portrait of your father, which is very different from what people in the Western side of the world see. And today, Carine, I would like to ask you questions about your father, as a father, as the person with whom actually you grew up. As far as I can remember from one of the interviews with you, you knew just that he was not your father when you were just about 7 years old. You used to think that he was your father, and you still call him your father. Sorry that I have been too long. Carine, could you tell us about Paul as your father?
Yeah. My father is a humanitarian, as you said it very well in your introduction. He's a human rights activist. He is a father, a husband, a grandpa, an uncle to many. He has concentrated his life. He has had a lifelong mission to speak up for human rights, to speak up for people who are in a weaker position, for people who have been taken advantage of, especially by a regime such as the Paul Kagame is the current president of Rwanda. As you mentioned, in 1994, he saved people during the war, during the genocide. He sheltered people in his hotel. And not only did he do that then, but throughout his entire life, he's continued to help people and speak up for people and always be present for those who came to him for help. I was also lucky to have him as a father. He, as you mentioned, I found out that I was adopted at a young age, and even so, I had never seen anything different. He has always treated me as his own child, and he has always been the role model that you see around the world, and that I'm happy that the world also knows the same father that I have.
Mm-hmm. Carine, what did you tell you, for example, about the events of 1994? Because what he did, I mean, it was not necessary for him to do. I'm sure that what he could have done, he could have escaped from Rwanda or saving, for example, his own family. But for me, actually, this is really just the act of heroism. And it was the act of heroism that he gave a shelter to so many people, or actually, and it didn't really matter if they were Tutsi or Hutu. So he saved all of them.
Yes, I grew up with him telling me that everyone is human, everyone is Rwandan, especially in the situation in the genocide in Rwanda. He has always made it a point to call, whether you're Tutsi or Hutu, to call them all Rwandans, all our brothers and sisters. And he has continued to, through his mission, to try to unify Rwanda, because after the genocide, there was still a lot of division, as you could understand, a lot of trauma from the genocide. And so he has made it a point to try to bring people together through a real truth and reconciliation process that can bring about change and stability in Rwanda. And in doing that, he also spoke up against the dictatorship that we currently have in Rwanda. He has always talked about how the human rights abuses suffered by the Rwandan people today, the lack of the Rwandan government, the fact that the Rwandan government doesn't acknowledge all the victims of the war, and as well as even allow a narrative, the people as well as creating one specific narrative of the genocide and refusing other people's perspective, other people's experiences and point of view in order to maintain one narrative. And the president of Rwanda has found it offensive. The president of Rwanda isn't used to people criticizing his regime. As I mentioned, it's a dictatorship. So when my father started speaking up about it, when my father became an open critic of the regime, that's when the threats began from the government. But besides that, he has always spoken up for human rights and for justice and democracy in Rwanda and around the world.
Mm-hmm. And why did he do it? Because I mean, his life would have been much easier if he would have just stayed at home without doing it. Because I mean,
he says that anyone that was in his shoes would have done the same thing. He considers himself an ordinary man, and that is exactly the title of his autobiography. He calls himself an ordinary man because he believes that these are what ordinary people's actions would be. And he not only has a huge heart that welcomes everyone, but he also saw that as a duty to protect people because he was in the capacity to do so. And for him, it's not a matter. It's not about bravery. It's not about recognition. It has just always been about humanity. And he saw everyone as humans and everyone as equals, and an opportunity to save people, and so he did. In addition to that, he didn't have to adopt me either, and he and my mom actively looked for my sister and I after the genocide. They searched everywhere. They asked for the Red Cross, for the people, for the UN, whoever was in Rwanda on the ground to go find us because of how big his heart is, because of the love that he has for people. And I was lucky that they found us again at the end of the war, and I was adopted, and he has brought me up as his own daughter.
Mm-hmm. Which of his qualities are you most proud of?
He always stands for the truth. He's not afraid to stand for the truth and to speak up against injustices. I've had many debates with him when we discuss international politics and when we talk about even social issues or TV shows. We always get into debates, and he always has a perspective, and he's so principled that he sticks to his idea that that truth and truth must come out, and that justice must be served for whomever faces hardship.
Mm-hmm. And is this the reason why one of your degrees is the degree in law?
Yes, he inspired me to study law and economics. Actually, in graduate school, he's always emphasized that we needed to understand the rules in order to make them better and to make it more just for the people around the world. And so I was lucky to have the opportunity to study law.
Mm-hmm. And I know that he also has a number of degrees, of honorary degrees, and I know that here has a honorary degree of law.
Yes.
Carine, and which of his deeds are you most proud of?
There are many. There are many, I believe. I think for me, is first off being my father, as well as saving people during the war, but also consistently having, keeping a consistent rhetoric throughout time, throughout the past more than 30 years about the idea of justice.
Carine, and which of most important qualities, for example, did he teach you to possess, you and your sisters and brothers? So I'm just wondering how the person like Paul Rusesabagina brought up his children.
My father is, as he, you know, he studied hotel management as well, and through that, and so he's very much of a perfectionist. So growing up, he always expected the best from us, only the best, and so he always did everything to make it possible for us to be the best that we could be. And in that way as well, he emphasized the need to trust your conscience and to trust the truth that you feel inside and to speak up for it. And so I would say there are many things that many lessons that he taught me throughout life, but one that I think will remain with me forever is believing in yourself and believing in your ability to change things and in the voice that you have to make a difference in the world.
And I'm just wondering, what did he teach to you? What kind of lesson when you had your TED talk, The Power of Forgiveness? For me, it was really very shocking, to watch it. I watched it many times last autumn before I recorded my first interview with you, and I was just thinking, like, how can one forgive such things? And I'm sure that your dad was standing behind of this. I'm sure that. So could you tell me a couple of words, because and this is what I just wrote a couple of days ago in one of my posts on Facebook, was that it was the hardest interview for me to prepare with you last November. I felt extremely furious. I felt extremely angry. When I was watching the movie Hotel Rwanda, when I was watching a number of TED Talks about forgiveness, including you. So I just thought that why does such injustice exist? Why all these murders happen? So this is what I couldn't understand. So for me, it was really incomprehensible how it could have happened and how one can forgive it.
Yeah, my father always taught me that when you keep things inside and that when you hold a grudge on something, it hurts you more than it helps. And learning to speak about, to open up, to speak about your feelings, to talk about the hardship, not only do you feel more comfortable to discuss it and to uncover things about yourself that you didn't know, but you also learn about others and others' hardships and how others went about facing those hardships. And through that process with him, when we talked through all of our sentiments and feelings from the genocide, I realized that holding on to some of those things, the pain that I had felt from the war, from the genocide, the pain that I had felt from having lost my parents, I felt a lot more okay discussing it once I realized that it felt better to talk about it when I realized that others as well had some level of hardships. And in addition to that, I felt that he's always said that forgiving somebody allows you to be at peace in your mind and at peace in your heart, and allows you to have a dialogue, a constructive dialogue in order to solve the issues at hand. And forgiveness is a way to open up the rest of the world, is a way to access things that you wouldn't have accessed if you had closed yourself off. And that was his lesson, and that lesson for me helps me to move forward, helped me to open up, to speak as I am speaking to you now, and to learn about the world and other people, and be able to help others in the way that I can. And that was all modeled through his work.
Carine, if your father could watch you and could hear you now, what would you like to wish to him?
I would tell him to stay strong, because he has always been a strong man. He has always been brave, and I hope that he remains brave. I hope that he continues to take care of himself in the way that he knows how to maneuver, how to talk to people, and continues to do that where they're holding him now. I hope that he thinks of us, and that he knows, since we haven't had any direct communication with him where it was opened and free for us to talk freely with him since he's been taken away. I hope that he deep inside knows that we are working for him, that we're working very hard to bring him home, and that we will not sleep, we will not rest until he's back with us, and that we love him very, very much. And the world, a lot of people around the world loves him. Wherever he is now, he probably can't hear this, and probably doesn't see the impact that his kidnapping has had around the globe. But I hope that he feels it and knows it, that we are all with him.
I have read in one of the posts, some of his friends wrote a few days ago, he saved so many, now it's our turn to save him. So what could ordinary people do for his life?
My father is a Belgian citizen, and the Belgian government it is the duty of the Belgian government to help him come home. And we are pushing the Belgian government to go faster and jump through all the hoops that they have to bring him home. But what everyone can do is to call the Belgian embassy in Rwanda and insist that they quickly move to bring him home. He was taken unjustly. He is being tried he's been falsely accused of crimes. As you know, Rwanda is a dictatorship, and one of the ways that they silence people, silence opponents, is by discrediting them, by making up stories about them, by making up false allegations, just to turn the public against them. And they've been making up so many things for many years. They've tried to take his life for many years. And so if you call the Belgian embassy in Rwanda and tell them about what you know of my father and who he is, and insist that they do quickly to help him home, to bring him home, this would help us. As well as you can also call the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Belgium and insist that they quickly bring him home. We're afraid that they will torture him in the prison. This is what dictatorships do, especially the ones under Paul Kagame. So insist that they do something quickly to bring him home. You can also call the Rwandan embassy in the United States or the Rwandan embassy in your local country and insist that Paul Rusesabagina be let go. And so the problem now is that because they were able to get him to Rwanda forcibly, now they control everything that he does, where he is. And even for us, we've talked to him twice over the phone, even that he had people behind him. So he was being told what to say. And it wasn't the conversation that we usually have as my father. He loves to talk. He's very warm and very kind and joking around when we talk. And there he was reading a script, basically, of what they're asking him to say. And the thing is, the Belgian government, at first, the reason why he had slowed down is that they thought that he was also still a Rwandan citizen. And because that he still had dual citizenship of both Rwanda and Belgium. But it's not true. My father is only Belgium. He gave up, when he arrived in 1996 in Belgium, he came as a political refugee. And the Belgian government gave him the status of a political refugee to protect him from the country, from Rwanda, because that's where he was receiving death threats for what he did during the war. And so the fact that when this happened, the fact that the Belgians had to first go back and say, oh, but is he also a Rwandan citizen? So maybe he is, and so it's not our responsibility, is absurd to me, because you give him the protection by giving him political refugee status. And now you're saying that you cannot protect him from the same country that you agreed to protect him from. It's ridiculous. And I think it's just them trying to not be involved because they realize that there is a lot at play, and but anyways, now the Belgian consular in Rwanda was able to go in and see him in the prison. And that essentially indicates that they have acknowledged that he's not Rwandan and he's only Belgian, and that it's their responsibility. But the Rwandan government is making it difficult for even them to access him. They've closed off the doors. They've only allowed the fake lawyers that they assigned to him to see him. We have lawyers that we're trying to get to him, but they're refusing access to them. So it's a dictatorship, and we hope that we are really working with the U.S. government, because he's not a U.S. citizen. The U.S. government is limited in what they can do. So they are trying to work with the Belgian government, and they're trying to pressure the Belgian government as well to help us. But there's only so much that can be done. And so we're worried. We're very worried for him. We're worried for his health. We're worried for his mental health, his physical health. Everything is very scary. We're not sleeping. My mom is out of tears completely. She's drained. And so we're worried. We're very worried, but we will do, like I said, we will. One of the things that he told us growing up is that because he wasn't afraid to speak up, and because he has always openly talked about his opposition to the government, he told us that if they ever try to take him away, as they did for anyone who opposes them, that one of the ways to keep him alive is to keep him in the news, in the media. As long as we are talking about him, as long as the Rwandan government sees that the eyes are on them, they will not hurt him, and they will refrain. They might not hurt him, I will say, because they can tell that this will cause a uproar internationally, and perhaps even hurts their relationships. And so this is my mission now, and is to keep him in the news, to keep people talking about him in order to protect his life. And I'm worried about my safety too. My mom, we're worried about our safety in Belgium. We're happy to have security now, but we're worried for our sake, because they have attempted to take my father's life multiple times. They have broken into our home in Belgium and destroyed things. They have they have broken into our home not to steal, just to intimidate, to get my father to stop speaking, because he was not afraid to speak up, and because my father had a global platform that allowed to bring attention to the injustice happening in Rwanda. They have broken into our home multiple times. They have come and destroyed, and sometimes they even came to just move things around, to destroy things, to intimidate him, to keep him from talking, because they knew that they thought that this would work. Fortunately, he continued talking, and he continued speaking up for the people of Rwanda. His heart has always been for the people of Rwanda, how to unify the country and how to get over the divisions of the past. And Paul Kagame, who is a dictator, frankly, in the all term, is somebody who has chased down critics all over the globe. Also surveilling. He's been surveilling our home. He's been doing everything in order to try to make my father, to silence my father. But my father has remained strong and continued talking. And even though now we are worried for his health, for his well-being, we know that the way to save him is to keep talking, just as he continued talking throughout his life.